SpongeBob has a dark side. So let's go over 18 episodes that prove this. So in this week's episode, we're going over the main character himself, SpongeBob S. SquarePants. Now his main issue is immaturity. I'll admit, not shocking, but it's the 3 behaviors that follow from his immaturity that we'll be discussing in great detail in the following episodes. And these 3 behaviors are: first, being naive to the point of committing crimes for other people. Number 2, having little self-control. He is capable of adult decisions. He lives alone and has a job and a pet. So functionally, he's an adult, but here we talk about the mental, and mentally, he is a kid, which leads him to lose control over his emotions or become obsessive. And finally, insecurity, because SpongeBob does not want to be seen as a kid. We'll go over the episodes where he masks his immaturity with things like wealth and fame. So let's start with his gullibleness. So we should go over the time he murdered a health inspector, or so we thought. The atmosphere sets the mood for this woeful episode, setting the stage for the deplorable cartoon shenanigans about to take place. Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob are fooled into believing the health inspector they were serving was a phony baloney with no pony. So they serve up cartoon's most accurate portrayal of British food, and suddenly they killed the health inspector. SpongeBob knows the weight of his sin. He acknowledges it. He lives with it, even sits with it. Faced with a horrible situation and an even worse immoral choice, he's faced with the stark realization: is he himself a bad noodle? This is by far SpongeBob's most controversial episode. It had 2 cartoon characters trying to recreate the intro of Goodfellas and proposed the idea that they'd even be comfortable covering up a murder. So it's not like SpongeBob intentionally tried to kill the guy, and it's not like he actually achieved that. But he also didn't try to stop Mr. Krabs. In fact, it was Mr. Krabs pressuring SpongeBob to commit this act. But we do see SpongeBob's hesitation and nervousness at first. But then he goes ahead and says this:
"But it feels so good."
So he was aware of his choices, but because he's gullible, he hadn't exactly processed the consequences. But they both could have, called the cop, told the guy to even leave, but they chose payback with potentially harmful ingredients. At every step of the way, SpongeBob could have exercised a sense of responsibility. So at the end of the day, SpongeBob is a kid faced with a very mature problem and folded. That's not entirely bad, but what is alarming is SpongeBob's capacity to commit major crimes for seemingly little reason. So SpongeBob may not be a bad noodle, but his gullible nature gets him and others in trouble. And SpongeBob is a repeat criminal offender. I'm not joking, let me show you some more examples. In this episode, Doing Time, he commits multiple major felonies that would send others beneath the jail. I'm not kidding. So SpongeBob feels guilt. He sent his teacher to prison on accident, and despite pleas from Mrs. Puff herself, he becomes a hardened criminal just to break her out and bring us Patrick. We see him try to get into prison the old-fashioned way. He puts on a shiesty and threatens everyone in a bank, which I don't believe I have to tell you is a very serious felony. And he breaks into prison multiple times. He then proceeds to impersonate guards and gets Mrs. Puff into more trouble. Now all of this is a response to guilt, and this guilt exposes SpongeBob's kid-like behavior in a new way. He's trying to make Mrs. Puff forgive him, an example of a people-pleasing mentality. I'll get into that more soon, but essentially he doesn't want to make Mrs. Puff hate him, and he can't seem to find a healthy way to cope with that. Another issue I'll be touching on soon. So because he doesn't realize Mrs. Puff's inner peace within prison, he swiftly descends into the criminal world. Now any reasonable adult would have tried to make amends and have been more understanding, but SpongeBob is too young to understand and won't rest till he's forgiven. Now we've seen how easy it is to get SpongeBob to commit some serious crimes, by the way, through manipulation or guilt, but we should also discuss the time he was manipulated to torture by Squidward and some robots, kinda. Torture is a violation of the body and has been used to intimidate, punish, and get information out of people. And SpongeBoy has committed this grave crime. SpongeBob ends up getting manipulated. He watches basically the movie Megan and thinks Krabs is a robot. Now unfortunately, Squidward believes him, and so reasonably he ties up Mr. Krabs and goes full CIA Black Ops on him. And I'm sure had Krabs not spoken up, would have ended much worse. Now this episode actually demonstrates the idea of mass panic, induction, and just blind obedience. So people who are prone to be easily manipulated demonstrate a capacity to enlist in a cult or groupthink behavior. Now I mention this only because SpongeBob demonstrates a personality that would be prone to join a cult. Now unfortunately, I got bad news. Anyone could join a cult, but some people are a little bit more susceptible. Here are some traits SpongeBob actually exhibits that makes me think that he would join a cult. They want to be validated. He feels like his job provides a purpose and recognition. He feels all the validation of being a great fry cook. Those who are followers, not leaders. Well, I don't think I have to say this, but SpongeBob is definitely not a leader. Now he just continually follows Mr. Krabs. Just look at the previous episodes we've discussed. Schizo thinkers, those who support crazy ideas very easily. So SpongeBob doesn't just exhibit kid-like behavior, but a serious tendency to follow others or crazy ideas without any serious questioning or thought, which I don't think I have to explain why that's kind of a bad idea. And so we should discuss the time SpongeBob actually does join a cult of conch. Bikini Bottom is home to many unexplained groups, and one of these praise a novelty toy shell. Now SpongeBob and Patrick praise the magic conch, which element ends up being the way to go. They are provided with food and other great stuff. Now because SpongeBob's been manipulated by the conch, he doesn't provide Squidward any food unless he worships the same conch. Now the good moral thing to do is provide a starving cephalopod a meal, but SpongeBob chooses not to. He chooses to let him starve. So besides hiding a dead body and straight up torture, SpongeBob also participates in the religious persecution of another. Depravity and obedience has taken root in SpongeBob's and Squidward's mind. So after Squidward's been broken down, he can no longer take it. He submits. So full dedication with no room for interpretation or questioning can always lead others to be manipulated, like SpongeBob with Squidward, SpongeBob with the conch, and like with SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs. So we've seen SpongeBob be naive, so it's made him want to cover up a murder and let Squidward starve. But this is just a symptom of a larger problem. SpongeBob is an insecure people pleaser. So let's look at another time SpongeBob bends over backwards just for Mr. Krabs and robs another bank. Yep, SpongeBob breaks into a bank again. I'm not kidding. Kinda. Mr. Krabs wants instant interest, free money essentially, for joining a bank, and he gets trapped in the vault. Now, since he thinks like a kid, of course, he doesn't call the police, and of course he doesn't alert the bank. He goes full Joker, albeit for good reasons, and tries to break into a bank. Now, it's not that he actually does break in, or he really doesn't really succeed, but it's his people-pleasing nature that endangers himself and Patrick, a darker consequence of his immaturity. His obsession with the Krusty Krab and Krabs himself really does border on cult-like. Next, we should discuss another time SpongeBob let Mr. Krabs convince him of another crime. I don't think Mr. Krabs is really a good influence.
King Kong ain't got shit on me!
Now this episode begins, as usual, with Plankton and Mr. Krabs fighting for the formula. Once Plankton is stopped, a very corrupt cop, by the way, takes away the secret formula as evidence. Which, I mean, we gotta remember is pretty standard. But Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob impersonate police officers and decide to tamper with evidence. Just like with the Nasty Patty, SpongeBob is influenced by Mr. Krabs to commit another felony. It takes Mr. Krabs to lie to him to get him to cooperate. While that's good that SpongeBob didn't immediately want to dress up like a cop, he unfortunately fell for Mr. Krabs' manipulation yet again. Now it's his obsession with making others happy that makes him commit these crimes. Mrs. Puff, Mr. Krabs, this is all due to a previously mentioned people-pleasing behavior and, well, his susceptibility to being manipulated. And, well, he's just not smart. But like I said, on this channel, we dig deeper. So let's go a little bit deeper. Now, people-pleasing is just an observable behavior on the basis that they'll be friendly and avoid conflict. Indeed, this is a behavior found in emotionally closed-off, conflict-avoidant people, generally speaking. But you don't have to just take my word for it. Here are some examples that led me to this conclusion. Wanting people to like you, craving validation, let people take advantage of them, afraid of conflict, a rule follower, and holds oneself to a high standard. Now get ready, because guess what? All of these problems are his parents' fault. Because SpongeBob's childhood, from the little we've seen, definitely was set with many rules and happy memories. But his parents also denied him the opportunity to grow, because they might have been overprotective or just straight up not tough on him. If we see the episodes they're in, which isn't many, but the ones that they are in, they're spending time with him, they're being kind, they even buy him a car. Pretty general stuff, but he is treated like a kid, which enables him. All in all, this leads to a lack of emotional maturity, as he finds trouble processing and expressing conflict with others and other emotions. Because people-pleasing is a sign of an emotionally stunted person, someone who can't express their feelings and boundaries to others naturally. They find that they want to make others happy, perhaps at their own expense. so he was most likely never taught to set boundaries and stand up for himself. His grandma also pushes him to be more immature. As we see in the episode Grandma's Kisses, we see him treated like a baby. So his grandma should be seen as keeping SpongeBob complacent as an immature person. He is a good rule-following boy, which was hammered in by his parents, and subsequently he feels he must now live up to them and their expectations. While good on paper, it leads him to be more naive and unaware of people taking advantage of him. So if we look at the previous episodes with this in mind, we see an immature person who chooses to follow others when he maybe shouldn't, and whose poor decisions leads him on the other side of the law. Now, this doesn't mean that SpongeBob is always super nice. Sometimes he fights with others, sometimes he argues and yells, and I believe this is also from his people-pleasing behavior. Now, this leads to SpongeBob having more conflict with his friends in the episodes that I'm about to talk about. SpongeBob develops a split personality. No, I am not kidding. So everyone bothers SpongeBob with some, I'll admit it, ridiculous requests. And as we've established, he really cannot say no. Well, this episode finally shows him showing some backbone after getting an abrasive side. You know, the green side of a sponge. And when his friends come knocking and asking him stuff, he says no, but now he kind of takes it too far. Now this abrasive side is easily explained as a separate voice, you know, another personality, as I said. In fact, it is SpongeBob, but twisted. It's his emotions, but amplified. So in actuality, this abrasive side is actually nullifying his people-pleasing behavior. But of course, he does go too far and he ends up being mean. Now, a mature person would just exercise some proper boundaries, you know, communicate their feelings better, and so he can't express his frustration naturally because he wants to avoid future conflict. He either goes too little or way too far. Now, we've established that SpongeBob's immaturity can lead to way more issues that lead to poor emotional control. Now, let's talk about how his poor self-control leads him to becoming obsessed with winning. Let's race. Now in this episode, Squidward is being a bit of a hoe. He challenges SpongeBob, claims Gary is just a simple mutt. The audacity. And he also claims that Gareth cannot win a race. And I swear he would have said show me a band if SpongeBob did not object and accept the challenge. Alright, he's not gonna let himself get steamrolled. That's pretty good. An improvement. But SpongeBob does get obsessive. And I mean so obsessive, he has Gareth working in the night in his sleep. Now that's just a new level of dedication that I wasn't aware of. And he goes too far, and Gary ends up paying the price. Now if he had exercised some communication and focused his energy in guiding Gary, I'm sure Gary would not have exploded. So as I mentioned previously, I believe he's just an immature person, and he has trouble regulating his behaviors, and usually overreacts, and in this case, SpongeBob got on Gareth's case a little bit too much. Speaking of him getting obsessed, let's talk about the time he broke into Squidward's house. Now, SpongeBob is often regarded as the best fry cook in the ocean. He takes great pride in his work. He spends a lot of energy perfecting his craft and later defending it. But in this episode, his energy is a little bit more directed towards Squidward not getting an award. SpongeBob cannot bear to see Squidward win Employee of the Month.
I won't let Squidward win.
A real insecure move, something I'll be discussing soon. But in this endearing endeavor, he goes as far as to breaking into Squidward's house, destroying his property, and continually berated him, all for a picture on the wall, let's just remember. Now obviously he did not act in a mature way. Honestly, had he not done anything, he probably would have won it anyways. Now it's this challenge to SpongeBob's abilities that makes him overreact. Because if he's not the greatest fry cook in the ocean, then who is he? Another time he was challenged was in the fry cook games. Let's roll it. Now this time Patrick is the one who's challenging SpongeBob. He's a bit of a hoe in this one too. I won't lie, I won't fret, I won't defend him. He starts by belittling his craft, and of course, in response, SpongeBob calls him pink. Now SpongeBob is manipulated by Krabs yet again, and he challenges Patrick all the way into a wrestling arena. He's gone full Whiplash. Now in this movie, side tangent by the way, Whiplash, we follow Andrew, a pretty cool drummer, and Fletcher, a pretty cool teacher, except he voices Omni-Man, so you know he crashes out. Anyway, he calls Andrew the N-word and practices his cod lobby insults on him all the way through. And of course, Andrew has to persevere all that. In the end, he does get his approval, kinda, but it's supposed to be bad because, you know, he corrupted him, whatever. Anyway, this story is not about hard work, but obsession, an unhealthy pursuit of a dream or a goal, and SpongeBob is Andrew in this episode. He even has an abusive teacher figure, egging him on. He cannot be a loser, he must be a winner, and it doesn't matter who he steps on. Now, SpongeBob, as previously mentioned, is kinda easily manipulated, so he already loses control easily, and we see this in his disregard for Patrick's life, and he attempts to take his friend's name, which is near and dear to Patrick. Now, competition isn't really negative, but of course SpongeBob overdoes it when it comes to fry cooking. But let's discuss the time he was obsessed with a toy, and that almost cost him one of his closest friendships / pets. Now SpongeBob has ordered a new toy he saw in an ad and hyperfixated on completing the record associated with it, and in the process he neglects Gareth, and so finally Gary leaves SpongeBob to wallow in his own challenge in pursuit of a new home. Then we probably get the saddest / best song in the series, debate me if you want, so I'm not too mad at SpongeBob. Now of course SpongeBob makes up for this, he goes all the way, he pulls no stops looking for Gary, but nevertheless it's very alarming seeing his priorities change so drastically. His obsession with his new toy nearly costed him his best pet. Now I would go into more depth, but we gotta wait for the Gary episode that will probably be coming in like 2025, who knows. So ultimately he forgets about one of his core responsibilities, really one of his only ones, taking care of Gareth. And he learns to be more responsible and learns some self-control. So let's look at a time SpongeBob actually exercises some great self-control to just compare and contrast.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Yes, I know, not a lot of people love Stanley, and of course this will be brief, but I want to say that his character is actually a lot deeper than we think. I always felt like his character was indicative of Sisyphus. In Greek mythology, the cunning king of Corinth, who was punished in Hades by having to repeatedly roll a huge stone up a hill, doomed for eternity to roll the same rock. But he finds solace in his activity. He welcomes it, and that is why it is said that we must imagine him to be happy. I believe Stanley encompasses this story. Because like Sisyphus, Stanley is aware of his flaws and his situation, and despite Stanley's childish nature, he knows he could be doing better, and that he should. Despite knowing he'll most likely fail, Stanboy still tries. Even through his flaws, he tries to find a purpose, to push that rock up the hill. So that's the closest we'll be getting to an episode of Beneath the Ocean Surface, so leave a like if you dislike Stanley. And so I wanted to highlight this episode because of SpongeBob's patience with Stanley, until he embarrasses him at the Krusty Krab. Like I said before, great pride and joy. He has a mental breakdown. This crash out is everything SpongeBob wished he could have said at the beginning. But of course, he just didn't communicate his points properly. Another example of improper communication and overreaction. Now I want to spotlight another time we see SpongeBob's self-control tested in... So Patrick Starboy gets his driver's license before SpongeBob, which side note is pretty embarrassing, unside note, and Patrick begins to rub it in. He even gets a free car, and for once tells Patrick to cool it, but of course he doesn't listen. Now for dramatics, he does tear up his driver's license and gets Patrick thrown into prison. The end. Nah, I'm just kidding, but of course we gotta overanalyze. So of course, SpongeBob reserves his feelings until he lets it all out on Pat as he's driving. And like the saying goes, comparison is the thief of joy. And it can be argued that he's grown more jealous because Pat got SpongeBob's parents' approval. A definite blow to a sponge whose all his life has sought to make his parents proud. All of this culminated in SpongeBob's rant. All of SpongeBob's patience went out the window. All these episodes to say he can't regulate his emotions because he struggles with self-control in times of distress. We see an abrasive sponge, he can't control his inner darkness or even tell people no. And when he does, he yells and lashes out. In the Great Snail Race, sure he stands up for himself, but takes the competition too far and ends up causing Gary's injuries. An employee of the month, he can't self-regulate his insecurity concerning his job and ends up committing multiple crimes like breaking and entering and destruction of private property. In the fry cook games, he turns on his best friend at the slightest slight against fry cooking. In Have You Seen This Snail, he quickly forgets his responsibilities in favor of a toy, a severe lack in self-discipline. In Stanley as SquarePants, he was actually pretty good, but he harbored his feelings for too long, and instead of quietly telling Krabs or Stanley how he felt, he furiously breaks down. And finally, in Driven to Tears, he lashes out against Patrick. Albeit understandable, still, it shows how easily he succumbs to lashing out instead of talking and explaining his feelings. Yet again, the non-confronting nature of his parents and their general kindness probably shaped him to hold in these feelings to the point of oversharing them, because he's just trying to be a goody two-shoes and he just doesn't know how to express. Really, to summarize, SpongeBob does not exercise healthy responses to problems he faces in his life, or problems in the episodes we just discussed. He either overreacts in the moment or underreacts and then later blows up. Whether it be stalking his neighbor to overworking his snail, he makes mistakes because of issues regulating his emotions like a mature person. All these problems come from a sponge that needs to be a good noodle, a capable goofy goober. Now we need to discuss SpongeBob's last negative behavior. Insecurity. SpongeBob within the show is seen as a good kid, a goody two-shoes, and an annoying person by a lot of people. And this leads right to SpongeBob's insecurity. being seen as a kid. And so every time he does receive any recognition or change, like in the episodes we're about to discuss, it launches his confidence sky high. But when he receives praise or even a little recognition, his behavior changes for the worse. So let's discuss how insecurity can lead someone to overcompensate with fame, skill, wealth, and all of it in between. So SpongeBob has this tendency to let things go to his head, like in squirrel jokes. Now in this episode, we see SpongeBob struggle to entertain an audience. Bro skipped communications for real. And he only is able to get people to laugh by bringing down Sandy. Yup, he drags her appearance, her intelligence, luckily not her state, but after being politely asked not to do it again, SpongeBob folds and soon gets addicted to the fame. He loves this feeling because it's everything he's not used to. He's used to people brushing him off, being annoyed with him, and everything. So once he's shown love and praise, he soaks it up, well, like a sponge. Of course, by the end, he makes it up with her, but this episode really introduces the idea that SpongeBob really likes recognition and fame. This is because, as we discussed, others use him because of his naiveness, and that he strives to make others proud or happy around him, even at his own expense. In this episode, SpongeBob stars in a commercial, and soon thinks he's just a big shot actor. And this episode continues to show his love for fame, but also exposes what he's insecure about, his average life. Now I'm gonna be honest, I never liked this episode. I know, click off now if you want to. I mean, I like the sweater part and some of the jokes, but SpongeBob's personality really rubbed me the wrong way in this episode. And it was only recently watching this episode for this video that I found that SpongeBob really just has the spotlight effect. Now the spotlight effect is usually negative and is described as a psychological phenomenon by which people tend to believe they are being noticed more than they really are. So people with anxiety believe people are looking at them when in reality, no one cares. Narcissistic people believe others are thinking about them, but in reality, no one cares. But in this instance, it's because of SpongeBob's arrogance that he thinks everyone notices him because of the little commercial. Now this episode really shows how much SpongeBob likes the spotlight compared to his average life. We see this in the readiness to quit the Krusty Krab, and in his passion and his readiness to perform for others to get them to like him. But as always, he takes it too far and loses control. Ultimately, this is about how he wants others to perceive him, like how he wants to be seen as tough to get into the salty platoon. So SpongeBob finds himself wanting to go into the toughest, meanest spot in Bikini Bottom, but Reg won't let him in because he's not tough enough. So SpongeBob continually tries to get in to no avail, but he gets Patrick, and like Sandy in squirrel jokes, he puts him down and even fights him, telepathically. This is one of the most clear-cut examples of SpongeBob's contempt of his image, a softie who should eat at Winnie Hut Jr.'s, which really represents his struggle to change, to grow as a person. He's growing frustrated because of his lack of strength, especially around Sandy, who's probably one of the strongest in the verse. And this isn't the last time he gets carried away around Sandy, because the next episode talks about SpongeBob seemingly getting what he wants, being renowned as the strongest of the strong, as the Karate King. So SpongeBob is tricked to go into Karate Island to buy timeshares and condos, just casual SpongeBob stuff. But really he goes there because he's given the title of King of Karate. Now we know he likes to compete with Sandy, and once he actually has something over her, he rubs it in. He soaks in every single moment. To him, this is his crowning achievement. He's finally believed he's changed. He is no longer just a kid, he is the king of karate. But then it all gets SpongeBob, and Sandy has to become Bruce Lee and defeat the Hulk. Now this isn't the only time he's rubbed an achievement in a friend's face, and allowed himself to change into what he believes is a better SpongeBob, like in Porous Pockets.
Money!
SpongeBob really proves that money can change anyone. But besides that, this episode begins with SpongeBob and Pat finding a pearl and getting, well, not a small amount of money. Now Patrick spends all of it, but SpongeBob uses this opportunity to change his image. Everyone around him loves him for it, but like the saying goes, be careful what you wish for because you might just get it. He changes his surroundings, he changes the way he dresses, and he even changes the way he speaks with this pompous accent. And he loves to entertain people with money. He relies on the love and appreciation of people when they are given money. It makes him believe they are all his friends, which ties back to always wanting to people please. But he doesn't even talk to his best friend normally, only taking appointments. He has fallen in love with the lifestyle. But like the other saying goes, if you ride like lightning, you will for sure crash like thunder. So once he has lost all of his money, people are kinda quick to leave him, his supposed friends. The sadness overwhelms him and he's left disappointed and alone. There's so much to say about this episode, but I think I'll just leave this for another deep dive. So overall, SpongeBob gets very insecure when others believe he's just an immature kid, and SpongeBob deals with this insecurity in the same negative manner as he does with all of his other issues, poorly. He feels the need to inflate his success, like Mrs. Puff, to change his perception, and sometimes he just gets too excited and loses control because he wants to please and impress the people around him. Because if he's not the strongest or smartest or even the best fry cook in the ocean, then who is he? So it's no wonder when faced with the opportunity to excel or brag, he does. So overall, SpongeBob's insecurity is also derived from him not being able to change, not being able to get past the accusations of being just a dumb kid. Thank you so much for watching to the end. I'm so sorry this took so long. Everything that could have went wrong went so very wrong. I had issues with the microphone, issues with the script, I had to rewrite a lot, issues with my laptop, which this is my college laptop that I use for like classes. By the way, college, I forgot college. I was just, in 1 week, I was just hit with multiple writing exams and writing assignments, even in Spanish, which never has these. I also got sick, you know, let me just stop complaining for a second and thank y'all for about, at this time of recording, 600 or so subscribers. Thank you so much. I was not expecting this with the second video. Let me just say, I was hoping for something like that. Did not expect it. I did mean to make a 100 and 500 subscriber special, but I didn't think it would take like such a short amount of time to actually get to 500 subs, so I was just kind of flabbergasted. I was blindsided. I took a bus to Confused Town. Speaking of subscriber specials, I will for sure have one for 1,000 subs because, you know, that's 1,000 subs. That's like almost 1 million. So like, of course I gotta celebrate. I don't know with what. I want to make a video worth a celebration, like unboxing SpongeBob Legos, making real life SpongeBob foods, you know, just something along the lines of that, like not just another analysis episode. Now the next video will be Mr. Krabs' episode of Beneath the Ocean Surface. And no, it won't be just about his greed and love for money, which, I mean, unfortunately, that is his whole character, so I'm just gonna at least mention it. It is a main focus, but it's not the main focus if you catch my drift. But as always, we go deeper. I just like saying that. And no, it won't take like another month to make that video. I mean, hope to God, I haven't even started recording. I just got the thumbnail. But the next episode will be shorter because, well, the only reason why this episode was just as long as this, which it was supposed to be longer, but the only reason why is because SpongeBob is the main character. You know, I thought more screen time equals more to take from, so yeah, all the episodes won't be like this, trust me. It's going to be more like Patrick's episode. That one I feel like is perfect. 10 minutes long or so. It's pretty much going to be like that. I do have plans for other types of like content on my channel. Video essays, just not on the characters themselves, but like actual like theories and stuff. And of course, conspiracy theories. Oh boy, I am cooking up some stuff right now. Let me just tell you. These are conspiracy theories that have not been on YouTube ever. So if that excites you, hey, I'm not gonna tell you to subscribe, but it'll get me closer to that 1,000 sub special, so thank y'all. Alright, the positivity really makes me want to push forward, alright? I feel like I can make hour-long videos, 10-hour-long videos, a day long video. I don't even know if that's even possible, but I could. Y'all make me feel like I could. I just realized I wasn't even staring into the camera. Honestly, even if this video doesn't get that many views, I like making this video. You know, I was complaining, of course, but I do like making content. So, and let's just continue. I want to get to the main cast, like get through the main cast of SpongeBob to make this a complete documentary series. By the way, I want to go back and remake the Squidward and Patrick episodes because just I feel like I could add a little bit more and add a little bit more to their characters, especially the Squidward episodes. So you might see documentary reduxes of those towards the end of my series. Also, speaking of content, you can put down some content ideas in the comments and I most likely will get to it. I like some of the ideas I saw in the previous comment section, such as Sandy and SpongeBob's relationship. That one will be made, alright? I give my word, it will be made. I just don't know when. I mean, my schedule's pretty much full for the next like 10 or so videos I got planned. And I also want to launch some more channels. But you as the viewer, as my witness, I will be making that video. And whatever y'all put down, y'all could literally say SpongeBob and Dune connected, question mark, you know, like something. Actually, that doesn't sound that bad. I might just make that, shoot, I don't know. See, that's what doing YouTube is, why it's so fun, you know, you can just pretty much do anything. Damn, it is. I thank y'all for watching to the end of this outro, because it's true, you can't be a YouTuber without knowing how to talk a lot. Yeah, this outro's been excessively long. Bottom line, thank y'all for the support. Sorry this video took so long. Next one won't be taking as long. I got a lot of plans for the future, so stay tuned and have a nice day.